It was the sound of laughter that woke me. Not my kids' laughter, not Emily's laugh either. This was a man's voice, low, confident, and too comfortable for my liking. I sat up in bed, the room dimly lit by the moonlight sneaking through the blinds. My heart pounded, though I didn't know why yet. For a moment, I thought it was a dream, but there it was again, another chuckle, followed by Emily's unmistakable giggle. My eyes flicked to the clock, 1:43 a.m. She should have been asleep beside me. I stretched out my hand instinctively, but her side of the bed was empty, the sheets cool to the touch. The laughter grew faint, distant, as if it were traveling down the hallway. Something about the sound, the time, the tone, the absurdity of it all, compelled me to get up. I slid out of bed, careful not to make a sound, and tiptoed toward the door. That's when I noticed it, the faint glow of candlelight leaking from the living room. Who lights candles at nearly 2 in the morning? Barefoot and cautious, I crept down the hallway, the faint hum of conversation drawing me closer. I couldn't make out the words, but the familiarity in her voice, the warmth she reserved for someone she trusted, hit me like a gut punch. When I rounded the corner, I froze. Emily was sitting on the floor, cross-legged, with a bottle of wine between her and him, a man I didn't recognize. His back was to me, but her face was lit by the flickering candlelight. She was smiling in a way I hadn't seen in years. They were playing cards. Freaking cards. Like this was some cozy game night instead of a moment that could upend my world. I wanted to march in there, to demand to know who this guy was and why he was in my house at this ungodly hour. But instead, I stood there, paralyzed, my mind racing through 1,000 possibilities. What the hell was going on? I didn't storm into the living room, although every nerve in my body screamed at me to do just that. I don't know why I didn't. Maybe I was afraid of what I'd uncover. Instead, I slid back into the shadows, just out of sight, and listened. The man spoke first, his voice smooth and confident. So, what's the plan now? You can't keep dodging forever. Emily laughed, a laugh I hadn't heard in years, one filled with amusement and ease. You always think I'm dodging. I'm just taking my time, weighing my options. Dodging? Weighing her options? Those words didn't sit right. I crouched near the corner, craning my neck to hear more. You've been weighing your options for months, the man continued. Come on, Em. It's not like he's going to change. My jaw tightened. He. That was me. They were talking about me. Emily poured another glass of wine and leaned back, her face illuminated by the candlelight. It's not that simple, Nick. I can't just blow up my life. The kids, the house, it's not just about him. There's a lot at stake. Nick. That was his name. Nick. I didn't know a Nick. At least, not one close enough to Emily that he'd be sitting on my living room floor in the middle of the night, drinking wine and talking about blowing up her life. You keep saying that, but I don't think it's about the kids or the house, Nick said, his voice soft but insistent. You're scared of what happens next. You're scared to admit you're not happy. I clenched my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms. Not happy? Who the hell was this guy to come into my home and dissect my marriage like it was some failed science experiment? I just need time, Emily replied, almost whispering. Things are complicated. You don't understand. I understand more than you think, Nick said, leaning forward. You're wasting time trying to fix something that's already broken. Something inside me snapped. I couldn't stand there any longer. Couldn't let this guy sit in my house and talk about my life as if I were some clueless bystander. I stepped out from the shadows, my voice low but firm. Broken, huh? That's news to me. The way Emily's head whipped around, you'd think I'd fired a gun. Her eyes widened, and the color drained from her face. Nick, on the other hand, didn't flinch. He turned slowly, sizing me up like I was the intruder here. Nate, Emily stammered, scrambling to her feet. I didn't think you were awake. Clearly, I replied, my eyes locked on Nick. And who the hell is this? Nick stood up, tall and calm, as if he had every right to be here. I'm Nick, he said, extending a hand as if we were meeting at a goddamn barbecue. I didn't take it. Instead, I turned back to Emily. What's going on here, Em? And don't give me some bullshit excuse about a late-night wine session with a friend. This isn't normal, and we both know it. Emily hesitated, her eyes darting between me and Nick. It's not what you think, she said finally. Then explain it to me, I said, my voice rising. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like my wife is having a cozy midnight date with a stranger in our living room. Nick crossed his arms, his calm demeanor grating on my nerves. I think you should relax, man. This isn't what you think it is. Don't tell me to relax, I snapped, stepping closer to him. You're in my house, drinking my wine, talking about my life like I'm not even here. You don't get to tell me a damn thing. Nate, stop, Emily said, stepping between us. Just stop. I turned to her, my voice hard. I'm not stopping until you tell me what the hell is going on. Who is he? And why is he here? Emily glanced at Nick, then back at me. He's a friend. He's someone I've been talking to about things. Things? I repeated. What kind of things, Emily? She didn't answer right away, and that silence told me more than words ever could. It's not what you think, she said again, but the words sounded weak, like even she didn't believe them. Nick sighed and ran a hand through his hair. Look, maybe I should go. This isn't how I wanted this to happen. Oh, you're damn right you should go, I said, my voice cold. And trust me, we're going to talk about how this happened. But first, you're going to walk out that door and stay the hell away from my wife and my house. Nick didn't argue. He picked up his coat, nodded to Emily, and walked out without another word. The door closed behind him, leaving a heavy silence in its wake. I turned to Emily, my hands shaking. Start talking. She sank onto the couch, her head in her hands. It's not an affair, she said quietly. Then what is it? I demanded. I don't know, she said, looking up at me with tears in her eyes. It's me trying to figure out what I want, what I need. What you need. I repeated, my voice rising. You need a stranger to come into our home in the middle of the night to help you figure out your life? Are you kidding me, Emily? She flinched but didn't argue. I've been unhappy, she said finally. For a long time. And I didn't know how to tell you. So, instead of talking to me, you talked to him? You brought him into our house and let him sit here, judging our life like he has any right to? That's your solution? I didn't plan for this to happen, she said, her voice breaking. I didn't mean for you to find out this way. But you were going to let it happen, I said bitterly. You were going to let this, whatever this is, keep going behind my back. Emily didn't answer, and that silence felt like a confirmation. I stared at her, the woman I thought I knew better than anyone, and realized I didn't know her at all. Emily sat on the couch, her face pale, her hands trembling as she twisted the hem of her pajama top. The only sound in the room was the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. I leaned against the armchair opposite her, my arms crossed, doing everything I could to keep myself from yelling. You're going to start talking, I said, breaking the silence, and you're going to start now. Who the hell is Nick, and what the hell was he doing here? Emily raised her eyes to meet mine, her lips trembling. He's someone I've been talking to. That much is obvious, I snapped. But talking about what? What gives him the right to sit in my house and act like he knows a damn thing about our lives? She flinched at my tone, her fingers gripping the fabric of her shirt even tighter. It's not what you think, Nate, she said softly. Stop saying that. I shouted, making her jump. You keep saying it's not what I think, but you won't tell me what it actually is. Do you know what that looks like? Do you know what you look like right now? Emily's face crumpled, and for a brief moment, I thought she might start crying. But then she straightened her shoulders, her eyes narrowing just slightly. I don't deserve to be yelled at like this, she said quietly. Oh, you think that's yelling? I asked, my voice dripping with sarcasm. You haven't seen yelling yet, Emily. I'm holding it together because I don't want to wake the kids. But you don't get to play the victim here. You invited this mess into our house. Now explain it to me. Emily exhaled sharply and stood up, pacing the room. I've been unhappy, she admitted, her voice shaky. For a while. And I didn't know how to talk to you about it. Nick, he's just someone who listens. Someone who gets it. Gets what? I asked, my anger boiling just beneath the surface. What exactly does he get, Emily? That I've been working my ass off to provide for this family? That I've been here every damn night, taking care of the kids, making sure you have everything you need? What part of that doesn't get it? It's not about that, she said, turning to face me. It's about us. About how I feel like I've been suffocating in this marriage. Like I've lost myself. Suffocating, I repeated, my voice hollow. You feel suffocated, so your solution is to bring some guy into our house in the middle of the night to talk? Do you even hear yourself right now? Emily's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't look away. I wasn't trying to hurt you, Nate. I needed someone to talk to. Someone who isn't you. The words hit harder than any slap. Someone who isn't me, I echoed, the bitterness in my voice unmistakable. And you didn't think to mention this before now? You didn't think to come to me and say, hey, I'm struggling, I need help? No, you just went and found someone else to confide in. To share our problems with. Do you know how humiliating that is for me? I didn't mean for it to get this far, she said, her voice breaking. It just happened. I was lonely, Nate. I felt like you didn't see me anymore. Didn't see you? I said, my voice rising again. Emily, I've been here every damn day. I've been busting my ass to keep this family running, and you have the audacity to say I don't see you? Maybe I've been too busy holding everything together to notice that you were sneaking around behind my back. I wasn't sneaking around, she shot back, her voice rising to match mine. I didn't cheat on you, Nate. I didn't. I needed someone to talk to, and Nick was there. Nick was there, I repeated, shaking my head in disbelief. You don't see how that sounds? You don't see how wrong that is? You didn't even tell me about him. You kept it a secret. And don't try to tell me you didn't know what you were doing, because you sure as hell knew. Emily wiped at her eyes, her hands trembling. I didn't know how to tell you, she admitted. I didn't know how to talk to you about how I was feeling. Every time I tried, it felt like you weren't listening. Like you didn't care. Didn't care? I said, my voice breaking with anger and disbelief. You think I don't care? Emily, I've spent the last 12 years building a life with you. I've sacrificed for you. I've been there for you every step of the way. And you think I don't care? She didn't answer, her silence saying more than words ever could. I ran a hand through my hair, trying to keep my emotions in check. So what now, Emily? What am I supposed to do with this? Am I just supposed to pretend it didn't happen? Am I supposed to forgive you for this betrayal? It's not a betrayal, she said softly, her voice almost a whisper. Yes, it is, I snapped. You brought another man into our lives. You shared things with him that you should have shared with me. That's a betrayal, Emily. And I don't know if I can come back from that. Her shoulders sagged, and she sank back onto the couch, her face buried in her hands. I don't know what to say, she whispered. You don't have to say anything, I said coldly. Because I think I've heard enough. For the first time in our marriage, I walked away from her. I didn't look back, didn't wait for her to call me back. I went upstairs, closed the bedroom door, and locked it. I didn't sleep that night. The events of the past hour replayed in my head like a broken record. Emily's voice, Nick's calm demeanor, their laughter in my living room at 1:43 a.m. By sunrise, my anger had settled into something colder, sharper. This wasn't just a lapse in judgment. It was a breach of trust. Emily hadn't tripped and fallen into this situation. She'd made choices. Every text she sent, every time she invited him into our home, every moment she concealed the truth, those were deliberate decisions. And now I had my own decision to make. By the time Emily woke up, I had already taken the first steps. At breakfast, I acted like nothing had happened. Emily sat across from me at the table, her eyes red and puffy, her movements cautious. She poured cereal into a bowl for the kids but barely touched her coffee. I could tell she was waiting for me to bring it up, to start a conversation. I didn't. Instead, I spent the day executing my plan. The first call was to a lawyer. I wanted to know exactly where I stood. I wasn't rushing into a divorce, not yet, but I wasn't about to let Emily call the shots. By the end of the call, I had a clear picture of our assets, custody laws, and what steps I needed to take if things escalated. The second call was to my bank. I opened a new account, one Emily didn't have access to, and quietly transferred a portion of my paycheck into it. Not enough to raise suspicion, but enough to ensure I had options. The third call was to an investigator. When I explained the situation, the investigator was professional and direct. "You want proof," he said. "I want everything," I replied. "If there's more going on, I want to know about it. And if this guy's been anywhere near my kids, I want to know that too." He agreed to start immediately. By the time I returned home that evening, the pieces were in motion. Emily was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables, her movements stiff and robotic. She glanced at me when I walked in, but I gave her nothing. "Hey," she said cautiously. "Hey," I replied, grabbing a beer from the fridge. She waited for me to say more, but I didn't. I could see the discomfort in her eyes, the way she hesitated with every word. She wanted me to bring it up, to give her the opportunity to explain herself again. I didn't. The next few days were a quiet war. I avoided Emily whenever possible, retreating to my home office or finding reasons to be out of the house. When we did cross paths, our conversations were brief, stilted. The kids noticed the tension, but I did my best to keep things normal for them. Emily, on the other hand, was unraveling. She started checking her phone constantly, her face falling every time she read a message. I caught her pacing the living room one night after the kids were asleep, her phone clutched in her hand like a lifeline. "Is this how you're going to act now?" she finally asked, breaking the silence. I looked up from my laptop, unfazed. "What do you mean? This cold shoulder thing. Are you just going to ignore me forever?" "I'm not ignoring you," I said, my tone even. "I'm just busy." "Busy," she repeated, crossing her arms. "Busy doing what? Making me feel like crap?" I closed my laptop and stood, taking my time. "Emily, you made your choices. Now I'm making mine." Her face fell, but I didn't stay to see her reaction. The investigator delivered his report a week later. Nick wasn't just a friend. He was divorced, no kids, with a history of dating women who were already in relationships. There were pictures Emily and Nick at a cafe, Emily getting into his car, Nick lingering outside our house while she watched from the window. But the kicker? Nick had been to our house 3 times in the past month while I was at work. I stared at the photos for a long time, my anger bubbling up again. It wasn't physical yet, but the emotional betrayal was undeniable. She'd invited him into our lives, into our home, and lied to my face about it. The next morning, I confronted her. "Let's talk," I said, setting the folder of evidence on the kitchen table. Emily froze, her hand halfway to the coffee pot. She glanced at the folder, then at me, her face pale. "What's that?" she asked. "Proof," I said simply. "Proof that you've been lying to me. Proof that Nick isn't just a friend." Her hands shook as she sat down, her eyes darting to the folder. "Nate, it's not what you think." "Don't," I interrupted, my voice cold. "Don't say that again. I've heard it enough. Just tell me the truth, Emily. Tell me what the hell is going on." She hesitated, her eyes filling with tears. We've been talking. That's it. I swear. We haven't done anything physical. Talking, I repeated. You've been talking to him in cafes, in his car, in our house while I'm at work. Do you have any idea how that looks? How humiliating that is for me? Her tears spilled over, but I didn't let up. I gave you a chance to tell me the truth, I said. You didn't take it. Instead, you lied to my face and kept sneaking around. So now, I'm going to make things very clear. This ends today. Emily nodded, her shoulders shaking. Okay, she whispered. No, not okay, I snapped. You're going to end it with him, and you're going to show me. A text, a call, I don't care. But I'm not taking your word for it. She looked at me, shocked, but nodded again. Okay, she said, her voice trembling. And if I find out you've lied to me again, I continued, my voice low, this marriage is over. Do you understand? Yes, she whispered. That night, I watched as she texted Nick, ending whatever twisted relationship they had. She showed me the message, her hands shaking, and I made her block his number. But even as I watched her do it, I knew this wasn't the end. The damage was done, and I wasn't sure if I could ever forgive her. The only thing I was sure of was this: I wasn't going to let her destroy my life without consequences. Emily and I spent the next week in a state of limbo. It was a strange, quiet dance, her trying to act normal, and me refusing to let her. The kids went about their routines oblivious to the tension between us, but Emily and I barely exchanged more than a handful of words each day. One night, I walked into the living room and found her sitting on the couch, staring blankly at the muted TV. Her legs were tucked under her, a blanket draped over her shoulders. She looked up when she heard me come in, her face tired and defeated. We need to talk, she said softly. I sat down in the chair across from her, keeping my distance. So talk. She pulled the blanket tighter around her, as if steeling herself. I've been thinking a lot about what you said. About what I've done. I said nothing, waiting for her to continue. You're right, she admitted. I lied to you. I betrayed your trust. And I know I can't undo that. You can't, I said flatly. Emily flinched but didn't argue. I don't know how we got here, she said after a moment. I don't know when things started falling apart. But they did, and I handled it the wrong way. I know that. You're damn right you did, I replied, my voice cold. I'm sorry, she said, her voice breaking. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know that I'm sorry. For everything. Sorry doesn't cut it, Emily, I said, leaning forward. You didn't just make a mistake. You made a choice. Over and over again, you chose to lie to me. To hide things from me. To bring someone else into our lives. Do you have any idea how humiliating that is? How betrayed I feel. I know, she whispered. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I want to try to fix this. I want to try to fix us. Her words hung in the air between us, heavy and uncertain. I don't know if that's possible, I said finally. Emily's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't look away. I'll do whatever it takes, she said. Counseling, therapy, whatever you want. Just tell me what I need to do. I leaned back in the chair, studying her. What do you even want, Emily? Do you want this marriage? Do you want me? Because from where I'm standing, it doesn't look like it. I do, she said quickly. I do want this. I want you. I don't know how to fix what I broke. I shook my head, anger bubbling to the surface again. You don't know how to fix it because you weren't thinking about fixing anything when you started this. You were thinking about yourself. About what you wanted, what you needed. Not about me. Not about the kids. Just you. Emily buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I know, she choked out. I know I was selfish. I know I hurt you. But please, Nate. Please don't give up on us. I stood, unable to sit still any longer. I paced the room, running a hand through my hair. You don't get it, do you? I said, turning to face her. You didn't just hurt me, Emily. You shattered everything I thought I knew about us. About you. I don't even know who you are anymore. I'm still me, she said desperately. I'm still the person you fell in love with. I lost my way. No, I said firmly. The person I fell in love with wouldn't have done this. She wouldn't have lied to me, wouldn't have brought another man into our home. That person doesn't exist anymore. Emily sobbed harder, her face buried in her hands. I felt a pang of guilt, but I pushed it aside. I wasn't the one who destroyed this marriage. I need time, I said finally. I need space to figure out what I want. Because right now, I don't see a way back from this. Emily looked up, her face streaked with tears. Please don't leave, she whispered. I'm not leaving, I said. Not yet. But things are going to change. I'm done pretending everything is fine. I'm done protecting you from the consequences of your actions. If we have any chance of fixing this, it's going to be on my terms. Do you understand? She nodded, her tears falling silently. I mean it, Emily, I said. This is your last chance. If you lie to me again, if I find out you're hiding anything, we're done. No second chances. No more excuses. I understand, she said quietly. I nodded, my chest tight with anger and sadness. Then we'll see where this goes. But don't expect me to forgive you anytime soon. Because right now, I don't even know if I can. Emily's sobs filled the silence as I walked out of the room, leaving her alone with the mess she had created. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I realized that no matter what happened next, things would never be the same. Our marriage had been built on trust, and that trust was gone. Whether or not we could rebuild it was a question I didn't have the answer to. But one thing was clear, I wasn't going to let her off the hook. Not this time. Emily's words replayed in my head for days after that conversation. I want to fix us. The irony of it wasn't lost on me. She wanted to fix the thing she had broken, but the truth was, I didn't know if it could be fixed or if I even wanted to try. For the next 2 weeks, I went through the motions, keeping everything civil for the kids but holding firm to my distance from her. She tried, I'll give her that. She was overly polite, careful not to overstep, and avoided mentioning Nick or anything related to what had happened. But I could feel her desperation. She wanted to talk, to push for more, but I wasn't ready. One evening, I came home late after a long day at work. The kids were already in bed, and the house was eerily quiet. Emily was sitting at the kitchen table, a stack of papers in front of her. Can we talk? She asked, her voice timid. I dropped my bag on the counter and crossed my arms. What now? She slid the stack of papers toward me. I've been looking into therapists. Couples counseling. I thought maybe. Her voice trailed off, her hope evident. I glanced at the papers but didn't pick them up. Therapy, I said flatly. You think therapy is going to fix this? I don't know, she admitted. But we have to try something, Nate. We can't just go on like this. I stared at her, the woman I had spent 12 years building a life with, and felt the familiar anger rise in my chest. You think this is about me needing therapy to get over what you did? You think sitting in a room and talking about our feelings is going to make this better? I'm trying, she said, her voice breaking. I'm trying to show you that I'm willing to do whatever it takes to fix this. I shook my head, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. You're trying now, Emily. Now that you've been caught. But where was this effort when it mattered? Where was this effort when you were sneaking around with Nick, lying to my face? She flinched at my words but didn't argue. I sighed and finally sat down across from her. You want to fix this? Fine. But therapy isn't going to erase what you did. It's not going to make me trust you again. I know, she said quietly. I don't want to give up on us. On our family. Do you really mean that? I asked, my tone sharper than I intended. Or are you just afraid of what your life looks like without me in it? Her silence spoke volumes. The following weekend, I made my decision. I told her we needed to talk after dinner. The kids were staying at my parents' house for the night, so we had the house to ourselves. Emily seemed nervous, her hands fidgeting as she cleared the dishes. When we finally sat down in the living room, the air between us was heavy with tension. I've thought a lot about this, I began, keeping my voice steady. About us, about what you did, about what I want. Emily nodded, her face pale. I'm not sure I can forgive you, I said bluntly. I'm not sure I'll ever be able to look at you the same way again. But I'm also not ready to throw away everything we've built. Not yet. Her eyes filled with tears, but she stayed quiet. So here's what we're going to do, I continued. We'll try counseling. We'll see if there's anything left to save. But this is your mess to fix, Emily. I didn't do this. You did. And if I feel like you're not putting in the effort, or if I see even a hint of dishonesty, I'm done. No second chances. I understand, she said, her voice trembling. I'll do whatever it takes, Nate. I promise. I'm not doing this for you, I said firmly. I'm doing this for the kids. Because they deserve a chance at having both parents under one roof. But don't mistake this for forgiveness. This is your last chance, Emily. Don't screw it up. She nodded again, tears streaming down her face. The next few months were tense. We started going to therapy, and while it helped us communicate, it didn't magically erase the pain or rebuild the trust. Emily was careful around me, overly cautious not to say or do anything that might set me off. I kept my walls up, unwilling to let her back in completely. I needed to see real change, not just temporary remorse. Slowly, things began to shift. She was more present with the kids, more attentive to me, and more honest about her feelings. But even as she tried to rebuild what she had broken, I couldn't shake the nagging doubt in the back of my mind. Was this real? Or was she just doing what she thought I wanted to see? 6 months after that night, I made my final decision. We were sitting in the therapist's office, our weekly session nearing its end. The therapist asked us to reflect on how far we'd come and what we wanted moving forward. I think I've done everything I can to try and fix this, Emily said, her voice steady. But I know I can't undo the past. All I can do is show you that I'm committed to making this work, to being better. I nodded, taking in her words. Then I turned to the therapist. I appreciate what you've done for us, I said, but I think it's time to face reality. Emily's eyes widened. What are you saying? I'm saying this isn't working, I said calmly. We've tried, but the damage is done. And I can't keep pretending that everything's okay when it's not. Tears filled her eyes, but I didn't waver. I'll always care about you, Emily, I continued. But I don't trust you. And I don't think I ever will. Staying together for the kids isn't enough. They deserve to see what a healthy relationship looks like. And this isn't it. Her sobs filled the room, but I felt a strange sense of relief. For the first time in months, I felt like I was making the right choice. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. We agreed on shared custody of the kids, and while the process was painful, it was also necessary. Emily moved into an apartment nearby, and we worked hard to keep things amicable for the sake of the kids. It wasn't easy, but it was the right thing to do. As for me, I started to rebuild my life. It wasn't the life I had planned, but it was mine. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. What do you think about this story? Can betrayal be forgiven, or is it always the end of a relationship? Share your thoughts in the comments, your opinion matters and might support someone else. And don't forget to like the video if you like this story.